Hi there, and welcome to our live event, which is in our Meet the Human Focus Leaders series. So I'm going to be handling the questions today, and Joan will be hosting, and we welcome Eugenio as our guest speaker. So as always, please do let me know where you're joining from so we can put those comments up on the screen, and like and ask any questions you have as we go through the session to make it as interactive as possible. So I'm going to hand over now to Joan for some intros.
Thanks, Sarah, and welcome everybody who is watching us live, or if you're watching this on the recording later. It's great to have you with us. I'm delighted to have Eugenio Pirri with us today, and I'll ask him to introduce himself in just a second. I had the pleasure of first meeting Eugenio last year when we were doing our research into what makes for a human-focused leader, and we got some great contributions from you then, Eugenio. So I'm absolutely delighted, as I say, that you're back, willing to talk to us about being a people-first leader. Before we get into all of that, though, can I ask you to say a little bit about you, who you are, and what you do?
Absolutely. Well, thank you both very, very much. So yes, as was mentioned, my name is Eugenio Pirri. I am the Chief People and Culture Officer at Dorchester Collection, as well as the Global Diversity Champion. I've been here for about 10 years. I'm actually here in my office here in London. If you see people walking behind me in that background, that's a glass wall. So just ignore them and just listen to what I have to say, hopefully. Yeah, I mean, hospitality for me runs through my blood. I started my career actually when I was 14 at McDonald's, joined hotels when I was 18. I actually started as a room cleaner, and through the years just slowly worked in many different jobs and areas. And here I am now 30 years later as the Chief People and Culture Officer. So I love what I do. I love hospitality. I love working with people. And yeah, I feel really honored to even be asked to be part of this. So thank you very much, Joan and Sarah.
Thank you. I'm just going to put a definition up for you, Joan, just to kind of give some context.
Thanks, Sarah. So this is the definition we came up with following the research we did into our Human Focused Leader paper. And as I said, you contributed to this. So it's very much taking that approach that it takes account of the physical, emotional and psychological needs of individuals so that they can do their best. So that's the definition we're working with in this conversation today. So to start us off, I'm interested to know, what does it mean to you, this being a people first leader?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a wonderful question because, you know, for me, it's about really understanding the fact that, you know, there's so many processes and procedures and policies and things happening in a business, but always remembering that, you know, none of this is even possible if we don't have the right people. We're not creating special and unique work environments so that people can feel motivated, people can feel engaged, that we're looking at people, you know, fully in many, many different aspects, not just the job that they're doing, but where they're coming from, who they are, what makes them unique, why are they doing this specific job, where are they going, you know, a little bit about who they are personally, want to know who they are professionally. And it's all of those aspects that have to come together that really then is where the magic can happen, you know, and really where you can start to think about somebody as future leaders, or somebody who's going to carry the culture of a company, or somebody who's really going to make a difference in wanting to achieve your vision and values. And so for me, being a people first leader is taking the time to understand who your people are, and then what you can do to really make them a success. And your business. I mean, ultimately, that's why we're here. So it's a two-sided approach.
Great, thank you. And that point that you're making about it is about the business. Again, as part of my research for this conversation today, I had a nice little play on the website. And I was looking at your diversity, inclusion and belonging policy and what you say on there. So I'd be really interested if you could tell us a little bit about the commitments and how you bring them to real daily life, if you like, to that point you were making is about the business.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're very fortunate in the hospitality industry already, because I always say we're very fortunate because we get diversity automatically because of the guests that we serve, because of where our customers are coming from, but also the different employees that we have already working for us that traditionally come from many different diverse backgrounds, have different beliefs, different ethics, different opinions. different ages. It doesn't really matter how old you are. There's various things that you can do within the hospitality industry. So that's the one part of it. But then of course, wanting them to feel inclusive and part of what you're doing is really where the special moments start to begin, and then where it sort of goes from there. For us, when we talk about belonging, for us, it's this idea that everyone, it really is unique and an individual. And because of that individuality, they're adding this brilliance to our culture. So we take a bit of a 3-step approach when it comes to that. First and foremost, it's really about education. And I think people really do need to understand what it is, what is diversity and inclusion. What is that uniqueness about all of the different people that you have together working, and then really getting them to understand why things are done. I always use the example of Pride, for example. People think it's a celebration, but in actual fact, it's a protest, right? It was a protest that started everything. And having that education is really important. And then once you understand the education, then you start the communication process. And that's when people get to tell their own stories. Right? It's about understanding where it came from, but also how has it affected me in my life today, my past, my parents, different generations, because a lot of people are affected by a lot of different things. And then once you have that, then you can move to the celebration part. Then you're actually really enjoying that individuality, that uniqueness, and that special belonging that it brings to the culture of an environment. We've had our challenges as a company, without a doubt, over the last 10 years. We have very unique ownership structure, all of those types of things. But for us, it was very much about who we are, what we can do, and the voice that we can have both internally and externally. And it served us well. It's been quite a journey, but it's been very enjoyable at the same time.
So if I were to walk into one of your establishments and see what was going on, how would I see some of that showing up?
I think you would definitely see it in the people, the uniqueness of the people. I think it's very telling when you go into a hotel and you see the different makeup of the different people, whether it's the age, the ethnicity, the nationalities, whatever the case may be. We are a gender balanced organization as well. So we're one of the few in the hospitality industry that is fully gender balanced. So you get to see that uniqueness and that diversity in your working lives, inside the working hotels. But I think at the same time, it's just that comfortable. We always think of our hotels being successful when you come in and you actually feel like you've been welcomed, and you can also be who you are. So, and that's difficult because, we're providing a certain service. We're there to provide you with something. We're there to serve you, all of those types of things. But that doesn't mean you still can't make people feel welcome and make them feel like part of the family. They're entering your village, let's say. And with that comes the responsibility to have a spirit of generosity, to act with kindness. We always say, kindness over process. Because too many times, we can't do that because of a policy or a procedure. Well, you can always offer kindness, and you can always find a solution. So I think it manifests itself in many different ways.
Okay. You've made me remember, the other week I went for afternoon tea at one of your competitor hotels.
Well, I'm sure it was excellent as well.
Well, the afternoon tea itself was excellent. The point that's coming to mind for me, the person that was serving us came to the end of their shift and they came to tell us that. So we thought that was great. And then they told us that they'd had to hang on for an extra 15 minutes. And then the implication was that we were the reason why this person had to hang on for the extra 15 minutes. So, so I'm interested in thinking of this, particularly the word belonging, I suppose, is sticking with me around this. It's like, I noticed you shaking your head there. How would you be dealing with something like that within one of your hotels?
Well, we always say to our employees through our training and through our development, and we do a lot through coaching. I'm a big believer that you train somebody, but then you have to almost leave them alone and let them get comfortable in the environment and let them understand how it works. You can't continually micromanage somebody because you're never going to get the best out of them. But at the same time, there's certain rules that come with that, and I think the golden rule in many cases, is certainly in your situation, is that it's not the guest's issue, it's yours, right? To sort, you're going off shift, who you're going to pass that information to, and all that kind of stuff. Putting the responsibility of that problem now on the guest is a no-no. I mean, and certainly, so I mean, we certainly wouldn't suggest doing that. And you would hope that they would have a plan to be able to pass your table onto another server.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that. The ability, the ability to process the check or the gratuity or whatever the case may be can still be done by another person if the systems are done properly.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on from this particular point. So when you and I first met, we were in the throes of the pandemic.
We were,
and we were all working our way through what was going on. And so you told us about some of the things you were doing then, being in it, and all the things you were having to deal with. As we're moving through and out, and I am always a little reluctant to say post-pandemic because we're not there yet, obviously, but we're in a different place. So what are you finding? What are the challenges or the differences you're facing now at this stage?
Yeah. I mean, it is definitely a different world. I find it hard sometimes to remember what it was like before the pandemic because we've been living through it so long and so many different things have changed. I mean, nobody would have anticipated. I think certainly in the UK, at the same time the pandemic was going, we had Brexit and we had other things going on, and the whole, movement of people changed, let's say. Also couple that with the fact that, we were in a situation where we closed 70% of our hotels for different periods of time. So you're in a situation now where people were at home. We chose to do, what we consider to be the right thing. We didn't do any redundancies. We kept people on full pay. And we just waited for, business to turn around and welcome people back into the business. However, it was a long period of time for people to stay at home. We're a 24/7 business, 365. When people are at home celebrating Christmas, we're working, serving people their food for Christmas. And so I think people had a time to reevaluate. And now here we are post-pandemic. We've seen a lot of people leave the business for personal reasons, move back to their home countries. Recruitment challenges are just incredibly high at the moment. Every single a lot of industries, but hospitality for sure is seeing its share of challenges at the moment in finding good people. And of course, this whole idea, and I know we may speak a bit later, but the whole idea around, the belief now that, we have to look at different ways of doing hybrid models, but of course, we're really strapped in the hospitality industry because we can't serve your breakfast from home and we can't check you into your hotel from home, things along those lines. So we have just so many different things going on. And then on top of that, the reality is that people did face mental health issues. You can't underestimate the idea of being stuck at home, not being able to interact with your family. In some cases, people lost loved ones. We know that that's happened. And the effect this has had on people's long-term mental health, their well-being. And we're seeing now the effects of this even more so, and this is never going to go away. And so we really have to be realistic about what the post-pandemic world is and what this means about how we operate our businesses and how we're going to move forward to now create a different type of environment for our people that is much more based on, about 2 or 3 months ago now, I remember with all my general managers from all across the world saying to them, performance management needs to end. It's not, somebody was late for work and I'm going to discipline them. It's all about coaching. It's all about understanding. It's all about really taking the time to talk to your people and think about how we interact in a very different way than the way we were so used to doing it for years and years. Because people's mindsets have changed, culture has changed, all of those types of things. And more now than ever, we need to really wrap ourselves around our people and support them. And not just them, their wider families.
And how's that going?
Oh, well, it's not easy. It's not easy. We've invested a lot of time and energy into different coaching. We've investing a lot of time into these types of discussions like I'm having with you today. What does that mean? And sometimes I even have to get my CEO to say, stop micromanaging these situations. You've got to look at the bigger picture. Because we're so used to doing things a certain way, especially in my industry for years and years. But the way we manage and lead moving forward, it has to change. I mean, for an HR person, I'll tell you, it's a bit of a dream. The idea that we're going to spend more time coaching, we're going to spend more time nurturing, more time looking at we call it our We Care environment, which is an environment where we create a safe and respectful work environment that allows, engagement to naturally be positive and prosper, right? So even more about that. But you're seeing it. And I think the realities of the recruitment challenges, the realities of mental health, well-being, all of those things that I talked about really is proving it. It's kind of like that's the proof in the whole formula here that we're seeing now.
We did have a question about coaching from Michael just before you started talking about that, so I'll put that up anyway. So he says, I am keen to know more about how you coach your leaders to be role models as and beyond leaders.
Yeah, it's very much, coaching is an ongoing thing, right? And it's very much, and, we have all the tried and true principles. There's a lot of coaching principles, a way that you coach out there and things like that. And we work with various companies like the Center for Creative Leadership and the Covey organization, things like that. So we have various coaching models that have always worked for us very, very well. But what was always missing from the coaching, because the coaching was always in a mindset to help performance, right? Whereas coaching from a nurturing side is very different. It is very much about help me understand your personal situation. Help me understand, how are you doing? Versus how are you doing in the job? No, I need to know how you are doing. How are you coping with what's happened in the world? How are you coping with your family? How are you coping with getting to work? How are you coping with getting on the tube? These are not questions we ever asked before. It was just like, your shift starts at 8, make sure you're there by 7:45, right? And so it really changes it. So I think the whole idea of how we nurture when we coach and the questions that are asking, that's really what's changed more than the formulas or the models themselves.
Yeah. We've got more. We've got more questions coming through. Do you want me to?
Absolutely, please do. If we've got questions, let's have them.
Okay. So Sean is saying, with most businesses claiming to be people first and saying the same things, i.e., great culture, strong purpose, etc., how do you, in reality, stand out when trying to attract people in this difficult time? What techniques work best for you?
Yeah, Sean, hi, Sean. That is a good question because it is very competitive out there. And I think, I always say the proof is in the pudding, right? You can say whatever you want. Like any good HR person, those are my values on the walls behind me and all that kind of stuff. But it's really what gets put into practice. Your people become your greatest advocates. And it's really about the environments that you create and really continuing to manifest that. We were fortunate, as I said, because we protected all of our people. We've come out of the pandemic in a better situation, maybe than others that, reduced wages or had to lay people off or whatever the case may be. But it's really about how do you then keep those people? How do you keep that motivated? Because you're also facing, people are offering enormous wages to steal your people now. There's so many different competitive sets that are going around now, but it's very much about continuing to stay true to that vision and then sharing that vision, and letting people experience it. And that's what we're doing. And I'll tell you, we're having success in recruitment. I will say this, we're hiring on average, let's say in the UK, 14 to 20 people every week. So it's not like we're not recruiting. The difference is that people are not applying as much. So we've had to change the tactic and be far more out there. So we're cold calling people almost like salespeople would. And then we're sharing our culture with them and telling them the story and getting them excited about what they could experience. And I'll tell you, we're having more success, though, when we do that in getting them to sign the contract in the end versus, we had so many applications. I think I was mentioning to yourself, before the pandemic, we averaged we're only 9 hotels, we're 3,600 employees. We're not grand or large in the grand scheme of things. We had 1.2 million applications in 2019. Wow. For 9 hotels, and we only posted about 700 jobs that year, includes the seasonal jobs. Now we're lucky to get 2,000 CVs in a month, 2,000, 3,000 because the world has changed. So it really becomes how you share your story, how you're bringing it to life, and how you're getting it. You're getting many people involved in the recruitment process, let's say.
Okay. And what you were saying there is about how you are telling them the story of what it's really like to work at one of your hotels as part of your engagement strategy to attract people.
Well, and now even we've started a new branding campaign. We just started in September. We're using pictures of our own people, and they were excited to be part of the campaign. We asked them, they wanted to share the Dorchester Collection story out there. So, we're getting our own people involved in it now, and because they're ultimately your best advocates.
It sounds like maybe the business has become a little more human itself as a result of it.
And it's so funny you say that, because I always prided myself on the fact that we were a people business and we were quite human. But it's not until, the pandemic changed everything, because as I've said many times, you got an insight into people's worlds. You got an insight into who they were, their family situation, their home situation. You learned what was really important to them. And then again, people coming back, having experience not working, and then coming back saying, I don't want to keep working the way I was working anymore. So you are forced to ask the right questions and to try to adapt your business as best you can, but it's difficult for us because we still have a restaurant to run, right? And people eat dinner at a certain time. So I appreciate you want to be at home, but I still need to serve the guests. So it's a real balancing act, and how you do that, and how you look at your contracts, how you look at the way you recruit people, how you staff people. It's been a really interesting exercise. Not by any means solved yet either, by the way. I think it's a long journey ahead of us,
Going back to Sian's question about what you believe stands out about what you're doing to attract people, if there was one thing that you feel most pleased about that you've done, what is that one thing?
I think it's getting our people involved. Getting them involved. We call it the Belong campaign, because it's everyone belongs at Dorchester Collection, no matter who you are, and you all have a purpose in what you do, and you're all working towards the vision and values of the company, and it's been really well received so far.
That kind of leads in nicely to Lucy's question that's just come up as well, which is how does the coaching you're doing internally translate to your customer service?
Yeah, for us, it's very much linked. So we call it guest centricity. So, and this is how we, let's say, define our entire service culture. It's all about putting a lot of people, I'll use a perfect example in hotels. This is not my example. It's by our wonderful director of guest experience. But she always says, in hotels, traditionally what happens is, let's say you were to check into a hotel and you're put in room 350, right? Then everything becomes about room 350. When do we clean room 350? When do we deliver the room service? When do we put the amenity in? When do they check into 350? As opposed to, actually, it should be about, the guest that's coming into 350, right? It should be about you coming into 350 and what you're doing. And so the whole idea is that everything needs to center around the guest, not the product. And still a lot of hotels, even the way their technology is set up, it's all based on the room. Allocating the room, how does it go? Whereas we truly have turned it on. We've created our own technology, and it's all centered around the guest. And so when you're talking about that coaching, it's very much about understanding, how are you? Who are you? What's important to you? How does that translate to guest centricity? How do we bring you into the equation? And so that one of our key values is personality. How does your personality shine? Another one of our values is passion. How can you deliver passion in guest centricity? So we have a responsibility as the employer to link those for the employees so that they can see how it all comes together.
Thank you. I'd love to bring you back to the comment you were making earlier when you were mentioning about hybrid working, and to just building on what you were saying there as well. There's so much out there at the moment about this going to the hybrid model. And when you and I were talking before, we were saying that actually the conversation about what about those people who have to go to work, as you said, we can't serve you breakfast from home. Yeah. Be interesting if you could develop the technology for that, though. So you never know. And there seems to be little out there around that discussion. So what are you doing? How are you addressing this point that you do have people who have to turn up into the physical workspace?
Yeah, this has been a really big thing for me because, obviously before the pandemic, it was all about the environments we create and all of those types of things. Pandemic happened. We saw a large percentage of the workforce. I understand that we're working from home, offices closed. But when you look statistically at actually how many people work in offices versus the people that have to go to work because they're in hospitality, tourism, retail, manufacturing, production, whatever the case may be, it's still a huge percentage of the workforce that has to go somewhere to do their job. And there's so much discussion around hybrid, and I love it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think it's important, and we have seen ourselves that people can be very productive working from home, and we're looking at different hybrid models for our office. However, there's not enough discussion about the people that, because so much happened in the pandemic, because, mental health has happened and well-being and death and all of those really, life-altering, changing things have happened. And nobody is having the discussion, well, what about that huge percentage of the population that has to go to work, but are still dealing with all those mental issues, but they have no choice but to go be a waiter or go sell clothes or go to the car production line, that kind of idea. So for me, I think it would be great to see more discussion around that. And this is really about what are employers doing around mental health and well-being, what programs are being put in place. We're doing a lot. We're looking at, the systems that we have behind the scenes, the benefits we can provide, the coaching and counseling. Before I went into the pandemic, I had one employee assistance program line. I have 7 now, right? For all different kinds of things. And we brought them in slowly during the pandemic. They're not going to go away. They're now part of our culture to provide as many opportunities for employees to get more help that we can give on the coaching and nurturing side, things along those lines. And I just really believe that you can tell I'm really passionate about it because it annoys me when I pick up the paper or I read another article about, people should be allowed to work at home. And I'm like, yes, they should. However, what about the rest? So what are we going to do about the people that have to go in the office? And what about those? And I'd like to see more discussion around that.
Okay, so what you've been saying, that a lot around the mental health aspects and the well-being aspects that you've been focusing on already.
Yeah.
If you're going to start this debate, because you've got this opportunity, you've put it out there, let's set the challenge out there into the community to have more debate about this. Where do you want to take that debate?
I want to take it, to all levels. Yes, there's the whole mental health and the well-being side of it, but there's also the other side of it about the fact that, working shift patterns, how people are coming to work, how they're going home from work, what's happening on their meal breaks, what's happening on their rest breaks, how are we creating environments for people to feel comfortable in what they're doing, and, how do you feel, even if we can say we're COVID free, there's always going to be an anxiety around somebody who sneezes in the room, or, people that have to get close to somebody to serve them. How are we going to manage that? Those are the types of discussions. And I really urge people to start thinking about that because, a mask is not a long-term solution. Not coming to work is not a long-term solution. Just providing good food in your canteen is not another long-term solution. There's got to be so much more to it. Yeah.
Okay. So what have you been doing again as a business? This thing around shift patterns, etc. What can you share with us?
A little bit of all of that. A little. We're trying to do. We had so many wonderful plans coming out of pandemic, thinking about how we were going to maintain what we were doing, capitalize on it, learn from the pandemic. Is a little bit like, don't let a good crisis go to waste. So what can we do? We have looked at contracts. We have looked at the way we staff people. We're a lot more flexible now with, schedules and things along those lines. However, we've been faced with these recruitment challenges. So we've realized it's a long journey ahead of us, and it was no real quick fixes and quick wins. What we are finding, though, that's making the biggest impact now is just, again, I go back to the coaching and the nurturing. That's making the biggest impact because people are willing to work with you and go on a journey with you if you can show that you are compassionate and that you understand what's going on. And, every once in a while, give somebody the day off or do what you need to get them to relax. We're looking now at the Christmas holidays and we're thinking, okay, how are we going to give people extra time off? These are the types of conversations that need to be having because people need to see their family. People need to rest and relax. Because we saw, people came back and after a month, they were like, I'm having a breakdown. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm too busy. I'm now burnt out. And so we've learned some of that the hard way.
Yeah. And I want you to come back to your managers in this, because, you're talking about quite a significant change process in moving to that away from micromanagement to coaching.
Yeah.
So how are you finding that the managers are making that shift, and what else are you having to do to support them in making it?
I think, hand on heart, I think they're doing a great job, all things considered. But I also see the anxiety levels rising huge in our leaders now, because it's hard to continually be the coach and the guy that's asking, like, how are you doing, right? Because at some point people need to ask me how I'm doing too, right? Yeah. So and it's difficult, and sometimes, the managers just need the job to get done too, right? And I respect that. And it's difficult. It's hard to have that kind of conversation and all those types of things. But I think they've done a great job thus far, and they're, it's not for want of trying, and they're really, really, really working hard. But we see ourselves as a company needing to invest even more time in how we work with our leaders, how we give them the right tools and resources, and how we also address their personal needs of needing to avoid burnout. Because as I said, I don't know how coaches and counselors do it all the time. I mean, I coach, but not anywhere near like we've been doing now. And, I'm exhausted. I can't, and I consider myself to be, a workhorse. So I can only imagine the younger leaders. And I think sometimes we forget, and we always have to remember that our leaders also have a home to go to that might be in strife or might have challenges in mental health. So it's really, really important to just talk about this. And, the more the conversation can happen, the better. But we get so wrapped up in the business, and we're guilty of it. We're nowhere near perfect, but at least we're trying to address it. And I think that's half the battle. Yeah.
Great. So that thing about putting more resources into helping the people becoming the coaches and giving them the support, and as a coach, I can completely agree with that. For me, it's the most rewarding thing that I do, and it is tiring. And as coaches, tiring. Those of us who are, we have to find ways to make sure we look after ourselves as well.
Now I understand why coaches get paid so much too. So I've learned a lot. You see?
Moving swiftly on. I can see we've been getting a lot of great comments. Agreeing and being delighted to see that you're talking about this. We need to talk about it. So again, you're certainly hitting the right note for a lot of people. I can see around that point. Absolutely.
Service is hard. I think people don't. And obviously I'm very passionate about my own industry, but I think people sometimes forget about how the hospitality industry works, especially hotels, and again, I mentioned it earlier, but the fact that we're open 365 days a year, 7 days a week. In actual fact, most hotels don't even have locks on the front door, right? They're always open. Even when we closed our hotels, we had to buy chains in some cases to close our front doors, because it's not the mentality of what a hotel is. And so when you're asking people to be on all the time and you have to cover 24/7, service delivery is not easy. And you're asking a lot of young employees, older employees to be on all the time, to be friendly, to always come up with a solution, especially in the 5-star world. It requires a lot of coaching and counseling, let's say.
Yeah. We've had one more question other than comments, which is from Paul. So how do companies avoid mental health and wellbeing support for employees becoming just a tick box exercise?
Yeah, I mean, Paul, that's a great question, because I'm not going to lie. At one point in the mental health journey, we've been doing it for about maybe, let's say, 5 years. It felt like, for me, it was a bit checkbox, like, oh, we have to do first aid training. Oh, we have to do mental health. Oh, we need coaches, all of that kind of stuff. And I think, the only way it avoids becoming tick box is by keeping the conversation going and realizing how important it is, and not just saying, okay, we've got our coaches, and now what? Are you continually sharing the resources? Are you continually making it okay for somebody to burn out sometimes or have a challenge and things along those lines? This is again, it's a conversation that I find and we find is continually on repeat. it's continually sharing it, it's continually talking about it, because inevitably, your managers, your leaders, the business, sometimes us, we're very much like, oh, but we have to do a job. We have a group coming in, we have a client coming in. And so, it's easy for us to just say, oh, just get the job done, put your feelings aside. And we just have to remember that we all understand, and I can't lie, there is times of the job that needs to get done. So if that job needs to get done, then what happens post the job getting done? Have you sat down with the employee afterwards and said, thank you for doing that, thank you for rolling up, how are you doing, where do we go from here? You have to be flexible, and you have to move with the realities of the business and the realities of the world we live in, and the realities of where people's mindsets are at. So I think it's a tough one. Yeah.
And so what you're saying, it is about the conversation, and again, I'm delighted, and I know there's been the comments about it is good to talk. For me, being a people first leader and a people first organization is that piece about remembering people are human beings and working with that. And so much of it is about having the conversation, isn't it? Or the multiple conversations that need to happen. Yeah. And we know that we can create change in organizations through conversation as well. Yeah. So the more we're having them, the more it's helping the individuals and the organization and whoever you serve as well. So conversations at the heart of being a people first leader and organization.
100%. I'm 100%. I mean, I like to think that we have conversations and we're talking about it a lot and all that kind of stuff, but I'm still not happy because I don't think we're still having enough of them yet.
Yeah.
Because I still see people, resigning because they're overworked or they need to take time off. So to me, where did we miss that conversation? Where did we do it? So you have to continually analyze yourself. Don't beat yourself up about it, but really push yourself, because again, I go back to we're no longer in the performance management age. We're in the coaching and nurturing age. I really believe that, genuinely, and that's what I keep sharing with my people. I still get, we still have to manage situations where people break the rules, but even that, you have to question why. Why would a 30-year employee all of a sudden break the rule, or a 2-year employee? They've worked with us, they know it. So there's just so many more discussions, conversations that need to be had to really get down to the bottom of it. Unfortunately, sometimes hard decisions need to be made, but you feel more confident you're making the right one if you've had the right conversation. I'll tell you that. Yeah.
We've had 2 more questions, so we got time to put those up. Okay,
sure.
So
go with them. Yep.
Okay, so Alison's saying, you mentioned 7 suppliers in the EAP space. How do you identify if they are creating value when it's mostly anonymous?
Do you know? A good question, Alison. I can't tell you. I mean, do I get a report of understanding? Okay, we've had 7 phone calls, or that kind of thing. Yes. I like to think that we're seeing value because we're seeing maybe, I do get a sense, maybe, let's say, and that's hardly scientific or, anything like that, but you get a sense that people feel more comfortable talking about it. And I always think that if people are feeling more comfortable talking about it, is because we're creating the right environments and we're giving them the right resources and tools to be able to have the conversation. So I take that as more the let's say the deciding factor versus, is this EAP company giving me what I need? Like I said, we get reports and we know how many people are calling them, and we evaluate. We don't always use the same one. Even in our private medical plans, we've offered different things, for people to call doctors and a la minute, online right away, all of those kinds of things. You've got to really layer it on the coaching, the psychology side, but also the medical side, all of those types of things. And then I think I just look at it as you're creating an environment where people feel they have options and they can feel more comfortable being who they are and more, and that's the way to evaluate it. I don't think there's a perfect formula with coaches, if you know what I mean.
Okay,
to evaluate. Yeah.
Okay. And I love that you are going with that holistic sense, if you like, rather than a set of metrics.
I think we have to right now. Yeah. Right now, for sure. Given the pandemic and everything we've been through, definitely.
Yeah. So Aya is saying, how do we make it clear to our leaders that walking the walk is super important? I'm thinking particularly of leaders who say one thing, make sure you have a good work-life balance, and do another, e.g. email at weekends. So how do you, as a self-identified workhorse, manage that?
Yeah, I mean, so you're calling me out on my own words. Yes, I think that, yeah, I mean, I think it starts probably, that old saying, it starts at the top. It really is the communication that's coming out from the managers, the senior leaders, let's say, whether it's your CEO, whether it's your general manager, whether it's your director, whether it's just your line manager, how they're acting, all of that kind of stuff says a lot. I think, you have to continually remind people about, who you are. This is much more about, what are you? What are your vision and values? What do you believe in? What do you stand for? What kind of environment do you create? It's really important that that's clearly articulated so that everyone understands this is who we're trying to be. Then you're holding people accountable based on that. We're holding people accountable on creating safe and respectful work environments. We're holding people accountable, like we define culture as the decisions that get made. So people are faced with decisions every single day. Are they making those decisions based on our 5 values of passion, personality, creativity, working together, and respect? Are they evaluating their decisions based on those five the behaviors that we believe are important in those values? And I think this is how you sort of start holding people accountable in the words that they're saying and the decisions that they're making. I will say, Aya, it's very challenging in hospitality with the work-life balance because of the weekends, the 24/7 nature I was mentioning, things along those lines. And I've been known to say to people, you will no longer send emails before 8 a.m. I've said that to people, and I think sometimes you just got to be direct as well and get them to understand why it's not right. But it's a continual thing. I'm a big believer. I'm the guy that walks around the office at the end of the day and turns the lights off and wants people to go home. So I really believe in sort of like not overworking yourself. We're not rocket science, people. We're just hopefully serving people well and providing nice hospitality. So
great. And I think there comes a point where we have to expect and let people be responsible for following through. So you can lead by example, and then people, you hope, will follow that, but also own it for themselves to say, okay, well, I won't send the emails before 8 a.m. or whatever. Yeah. I will trust that it is okay. And if you created that environment, then you'll be able to do that.
The scary thing is sometimes at 8 a.m. you get 20 emails, but that's another story.
Yeah, they'll all be waiting to send them. Yeah. I'm loving the fact that the conversations piece was coming again through what you were saying there. And I was just thinking, a lot of what we've been talking about is having the conversations, all the conversations that need to happen to enable people to make the right decisions. Yeah. Ultimately for themselves and for the business, which is so much part of that people first mentality. That's the accountability piece.
If you've done a good job of, you hopefully have recruited the right person and you've trained them in a way, and then at some point you've got to trust them to make decisions, make errors as well, learn from them. And, but I think, if you start micromanaging everything, again, performance management, you will lose. I just believe you will lose. It's just not the way it should be done. That's my personal belief, right? So
absolutely, and we're happy to take that today. Yeah. So keeping an eye on our time, and thank you for being with us, as we've said. It has gone, it goes quick, hopefully when you're having some fun, and it's been great. Yeah, I've really enjoyed hearing from you. But if there was one thought, and there's been many great ones, but if there was one thought you wanted to leave with the audience today, what's your final piece of advice for people, or what's your thought?
Yeah, most definitely, don't lose what you've learned through the pandemic. I think we have just been, it's almost, it was such a difficult time. I would never want it repeated again, but we have gained so many wonderful insights, and, we learned so much about our people. We learned so much about who they are, how they live, what's important to them. We're coming out of it with so many now unique challenges and things like that. And if we don't, really build upon what we did and how we handled it and how we're going to make it a success and then bring it forward into the future, then we've failed our people. We failed our businesses, because, this is a challenging thing and it could be repeated again. You know, you don't, I mean, heaven forbid, but you know, we live in a strange world. And so definitely take it to really learn, really learn from what we've experienced, and do the best by your people and your business.
And then you will be those people first leaders and organizations that we're talking about. Absolutely.
There you go.
Eugenio, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. You know, I've certainly got a lot of value from it, and I think the audience has as well from the comments we've been seeing. So we say thank you very much, and thank you, Sarah, for hosting us the way that you have done. I'm going to hand back to you, Sarah, for your final announcement.
Yeah, so there's quite a lot of comments going on where people are talking to each other in the chat, which is really great. So I'll just say that we'll go into the chat afterwards and just respond to those. So whether you're able to as well, Joan and Eugenio, that would be great. And yeah, so we're done for today. Our next Leadership Live session will be in November. We just came up with the title today, which is about the intersection between technology and communication. So we will share details of that on our page in due course. So thank you very much for everyone that's joined us. And as I said, we will go through and answer the comments after we finished. So thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.